I want to tell you something that took me 73 years to finally say out loud. 73 years of living, 73 years of loving people who sometimes did not deserve it, 73 years of making excuses, keeping the peace, swallowing my words, and shrinking myself so that someone else could feel comfortable in the space they were already taking up too much of. And I am here today, standing in front of you, not to lecture you, not to preach at you, but to look you dead in the eye and say enough, enough, cut them off. I do not care who they are. I do not care if you share blood with them. I do not care if you grew up in the same house, sat at the same dinner table, or knelt beside them at a church pew every Sunday morning for 30 years. If someone is consistently making you feel less than, draining you dry, poisoning your peace, stealing your joy, and leaving you exhausted simply from being around them, you owe them nothing. Nothing. And I mean that with every single year of my 73. Let me take you back. Let me take you back to a time in my life when I thought love was something you had to earn through suffering. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My father was a hard man, not cruel in the obvious ways. He never raised his hand to us, but he had a tongue like a blade, and he knew exactly where to cut. Every report card I brought home, no matter how good, was met with the same expression: a slow scan down the page, a small shake of the head. Could have done better, Peter. Every success in my life, he found a way to minimize. Every dream I had, he found a way to make seem foolish. And for decades, I thought that was love. I thought love was supposed to have rough edges. I thought people who cared about you were supposed to challenge you by tearing you down. I was wrong. I carried that belief into friendships. I carried it into partnerships. I surrounded myself with people who reflected what I had been taught, that I was not quite enough, that I had to keep proving myself, that my comfort and my feelings were secondary to keeping the relationship alive. And you know what all of that gave me? It gave me 60 years of relationships that felt like jobs I could never get promoted from. Exhausting, thankless, soul-crushing jobs. Now here is what nobody tells you about toxic people. Nobody ever tells you this, and I think it is the most important thing I can say to you today. Toxic people are not always monsters. They are not always screaming at you in parking lots or throwing things across the room. Sometimes, and this is the really dangerous kind, sometimes they are charming, sometimes they are funny, sometimes they are your mother, who makes the best apple pie you have ever tasted, but who also has a way of making every conversation about your life feel like a courtroom, and you are always on the stand, and you are always guilty of something you do not fully understand. Sometimes they are your brother, who you grew up defending on playgrounds, who has borrowed money from you 17 times and paid it back never, and who calls you only when he needs something and disappears the moment you need him. Sometimes they are your best friend of 40 years. 40 years who makes little comments about your weight, your choices, your spouse, always wrapped in a laugh, always followed by, "I'm just kidding, you know I love you." Do they? Do they love you? Because love does not leave you feeling hollowed out after every encounter. Love does not make you rehearse what you are going to say before you pick up the phone. Love does not make you feel relieved when a call goes to voicemail. Think about that for a moment. Think about the people in your life right now. Think about who comes to mind when I say this. Is there someone whose name on your phone screen makes your stomach tighten? Is there someone who, after every visit, every phone call, every holiday dinner, leaves you feeling smaller than when they arrived? Is there someone you have been making excuses for so long that the excuses have become automatic, like breathing? You do not even think about it anymore. "Oh, that's just how she is. He means well." You have to understand where she came from. He had a hard childhood, and maybe that is all true. Maybe every single one of those things is true, but here is what I need you to hear. And I need you to really hear it, not just let it pass through you. Other people's pain does not give them the right to become yours, to carry. Their trauma does not give them a lifetime license to wound you. Understanding why someone is the way they are is not the same as accepting the damage they do. You can have compassion for a person and still choose to protect yourself from them. You can love someone from a distance. In fact, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them is to step back and let the silence speak. I learned this the hard way. My older sister, Margaret. God, I love that woman. She was my first best friend. We built forts together in the backyard. We stayed up late whispering through the dark. She was the one who taught me how to ride a bike. For years and years, Margaret was my anchor. But somewhere along the way, gradually, so gradually, I barely noticed it, Margaret became someone different. Or maybe she had always been this person, and I had just been too close to see it. She was critical in a way that cut deep. She undermined my marriage in small, persistent ways. She told my children things she had no business telling them. And when I tried to talk to her about it, she turned it around every single time. Every conversation ended with me apologizing for things I had not done. Every attempt to address the hurt ended with her becoming the victim. For years I kept trying. For years I kept going back, kept calling, kept showing up to her house on Christmas with a smile on my face and resentment building in my chest like water behind a dam. And then, at 68 years old, I finally said no more. It was not dramatic. There was no big blow up, no final confrontation. I simply stopped calling. I stopped showing up. I stopped performing a closeness that had long since hollowed out. And yes, it hurt. Oh, it hurt in ways I did not expect. Because grief is not only for the dead. You can grieve a living person. You can mourn a relationship that is still technically alive, but has long since stopped breathing. I grieved Margaret. I grieved the sister she once was to me, or the sister I had perhaps imagined her to be. I grieved the family I thought we would grow old inside of together. But on the other side of that grief, and I want you to really take this in, on the other side of that grief was the most extraordinary thing I had felt in decades. It was quiet. It was peace. Not the fake peace you feel when you've temporarily avoided a difficult person. Real peace. The kind that settles into your bones. The kind that lets you sit in your own kitchen on a Tuesday morning and just breathe without dreading the phone ringing. I did not know how heavy I had been carrying her until I finally set her down. Now I know what some of you are thinking, because I've had this conversation with people before and I know the objections. You are thinking, but what will people say? What will the family think? Who cuts off their own sister? Who cuts off their own mother, their own father, their own child? I will tell you who. Survivors. People who finally love themselves enough to protect what they have left. People who realize that the family you choose can be just often more real and nourishing than the family you were handed at birth. People who understand that obligation is not the same as love. Being related to someone does not make them safe. Sharing a last name does not mean they are entitled to space in your life. Blood is not a contract. It was never supposed to be. And what about forgiveness, Peter? What about forgiveness? Because I know that is coming too. People love to invoke forgiveness as a reason to maintain contact with someone who is hurting you. They say, but the Bible says forgive. They say holding on to anger only hurts you. And you know what? They are not entirely wrong. Forgiveness matters. Releasing the rage matters. Letting go of the bitterness so it does not eat you from the inside out. That matters enormously. But here is what they get wrong. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. Forgiveness is something you do inside yourself, for yourself, so that the poison of resentment does not continue to course through your veins. Reconciliation, actually rebuilding the relationship, allowing the person back into your life, that requires something else entirely. It requires changed behavior, real, demonstrated, consistent, over time proven changed behavior, not an apology, not a tearful phone call, not a Christmas card or a Facebook comment or a fleeting moment of remorse, changed behavior. And if you have not seen it, if you keep giving chances and keep getting the same person, then you are not being loving. You are being a fool. I say that with the full kindness of someone who was a fool for a very long time. I want to talk to the younger people in this room for just a moment, because I see you, I see how you are already building your lives, already choosing your circles, already figuring out who gets a seat at the table. And I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me at 25, at 30, at 45. You are not obligated to keep anyone in your life simply because they have been there a long time. Tenure is not the same as value. The fact that someone has known you since kindergarten does not mean they get to stay in your life if they are making your life smaller. Time invested is not a reason to keep investing. The saddest thing I see is people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who are still managing the feelings, walking on eggshells, and begging for the approval of people who were never going to give it. Do not be me at 50. Do not be me at 60. Start now. Look honestly at the relationships in your life and ask yourself a simple question. Does this person add to my life, or do they take from it? Does spending time with them leave me fuller or emptier? Do I feel seen and valued and respected in their presence, or do I feel judged, minimized, and managed? That is the only question that matters. Not how long you have known them, not what your mother would think, not what it would look like at Thanksgiving. The only question, does this person make my life better or worse? And if the honest answer is worse, cut them off. Not with hatred, not with a dramatic speech. You do not owe them an explanation. You do not owe them a detailed accounting of everything they have done wrong. You do not need to win the argument, make them understand, or get them to admit what they did. That is not going to happen anyway. People who consistently hurt others rarely have the self-awareness to understand why, and even if they do, that understanding is yours to have, not yours to wait on them to arrive at before you can move forward. You just cut them off, quietly, decisively, with your eyes open and your heart protected. Now let me say something about what comes after, because I do not want to paint a false picture. Cutting off a toxic person, especially a family member, is not something you do once and then float through the rest of your life in unbroken serenity. It is hard. There will be guilt. Oh, there will be so much guilt. Guilt is the tax you pay for finally taking care of yourself when you have spent a lifetime taking care of everyone else. It will come for you in the quiet moments. It will come at 3 in the morning. It will come on their birthday, on holidays, when something happens in the world and you have an old impulse to pick up the phone. There will be family members who take sides, and some of them will take the wrong side. There will be people who do not understand and who will tell you that you are being cold or selfish or dramatic, and you will have to sit with all of that and make peace with something uncomfortable. The knowledge that you cannot control how your story is told by someone else. You can only control how you live it. But I promise you this. I promise you with the full weight of my 73 years. The other side of all of that discomfort is a version of your life that you have perhaps never let yourself imagine. It is a life where your energy is no longer siphoned off by people who take without giving. It is a life where your home feels like a refuge rather than a performance space. It is a life where the relationships you do have are real, truly real, built on genuine love and mutual respect, not on obligation and fear and the exhausting maintenance of a pretense. I am 73. I do not have time to spend on people who make me feel bad, and neither do you. Even if you are 23, time is the one thing none of us can make more of. Every hour you spend managing a toxic relationship is an hour you cannot spend building a joyful one. Every ounce of emotional energy you pour into a person who drains you is energy that could have gone to someone who refuels you. Every piece of yourself you chip away trying to make a difficult person comfortable is a piece of yourself you are not giving to you. You matter. Your peace matters. Your joy matters. Your health, and I want you to know, because the research is very clear on this, your physical health matters, because chronic stress from toxic relationships does real damage to real bodies. It damages your immune system. It elevates your blood pressure. It disrupts your sleep. Toxic relationships are not just emotionally painful, they are literally making you sick. So, I am not just asking you to cut off toxic people because your feelings matter, though they do. I am asking you to cut off toxic people because your life matters, your actual, physical, one-shot, irreversible life. There is a woman I met a few years ago at one of my talks. She came up to me afterward, tears streaming down her face, and she said, "Peter, I have wanted to hear someone say what you just said for 40 years, but I still don't know if I can do it." She is my mother, and I looked at her, this woman in her late 60s, who had clearly been worn down by decades of this, and I said, I know how hard it is. I know that the person who is supposed to love you most in the world, unconditionally, without condition, is the very person you are considering protecting yourself from. And I know that is a grief so specific and so painful that most people have no language for it. But I also said this: you did not come to this decision lightly. You have already been thinking about it for 40 years. What you are looking for from me is not permission, because you do not need my permission. What you are looking for is someone to confirm that your instincts are right, that your pain is real, that you are not crazy, not selfish, not cold. You are just finally listening to the part of yourself that has been trying to keep you safe for 40 years. She wrote to me 3 months later. She had done it. She had taken a step back from her mother, set some limits, created some space, and she said, and this is what I want to leave you with. She said, for the first time in my adult life, I feel like I can breathe. For the first time in her adult life, she could breathe. How long has it been since you could just breathe? How long since you moved through your days without that low hum of dread, without managing someone else's emotions, without the constant calculation of what you can and cannot say to keep the peace? You deserve to breathe. You deserve peace that is not earned through suffering. You deserve relationships that do not require you to make yourself smaller. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes getting there requires the bravest, most loving thing you will ever do for yourself. It requires letting go. And I am telling you, with every single year I have lived, with every scar and every lesson and every morning I have woken up grateful for the quiet, you deserve that too, all of it. The peace, the real love, the relationships that feel like coming home. Cut them off, even if it's your family, especially if it's your family, and then just watch what grows. My name is Peter Whitemore, and I am 73 years old, and I am finally truly free.